money has always needed an asset underneath it to price money. And why would that be? Is because money's always been broken. The people closest to the money supply benefit the most.
There is a major contradiction in the system we live in. Technology should make things cheaper, yet inflation keeps eroding our purchasing power. Jeff Booth, author of The Price of Tomorrow, argues this system is unsustainable and will be eventually replaced by a sound money system built on Bitcoin.
I see it as a protocol imposing new rules. A protocol is winner take all. There is no second internet.
But what if the existing fiat system is more resilient than Bitcoiners think? What would it actually take for it to collapse? And what if the advent of quantum computing challenges this thesis? I asked Jeff these questions and more in our latest interview. Before we start, if you enjoy our content, don't forget to put a like and subscribe to our channel. This video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. I'm Giovanni, let's get into it. So you often say that we live in a system based on theft. Can you tell us who is robbing us and how?
We are robbing ourselves. We are robbing ourselves by using money that needs to expand forever. And the simplest way you could look at this is if you had infinite monetary units that you could just keep on creating forever, then prices of everything, raw materials, everything you own, food, medicine, everything against those infinite monetary units would go up forever. You live in a system, if you're using a US dollar or any other dollar, you live in a system that is creating infinite monetary units, and you choose to. In other words, it's no one else, you are robbing you. That's so important to understand. A credit-based system that we live in has to increase money supply, because if the free market worked on a credit-based system where prices fell, the credit would not exist. It would just be destroyed. And if the credit-based money system, the debt-based monetary system that lends money into existence, stopped having money in it, there'd be no money left. So, and that's very easy to say it's someone else. In fact, every media event out there trying to keep you in the system is blaming somebody else. Well, you have a new leader coming in to be on top, to that their money that they get the most of it, but it's you.
We shouldn't blame anyone else besides us, but how is that possible? Like, how are we actively taking part in this?
The only thing that's outside of that system and decentralized and secure is Bitcoin. It's completely outside of the system. Sure, people still price it by that system today. But if you're actually spending in Bitcoin, building on Bitcoin, building on the protocol, then you are on an energy-backed system that is decentralized and secure. And so what we find ourselves and what people find themselves in is inside the other system, screaming at other people, or spending all of their time yelling at it's Trump or it's Biden or it's Iran or it's Ukraine or it's Russia. Or it's Israel. It's always somebody else, which the system will absolutely try to make you think it's somebody else, to divide you, to keep you stuck in the system. And there's an open door that you could just walk over to another system. Sure, that system today is early. It's hard to spend Bitcoin everywhere. That system but it's building privacy. It's building resiliency. It's building on top of Bitcoin on a protocol. And you can move your time and you can build on that protocol. And when you say you don't have agency, why? Can you go to the store and say, listen, I'll shop here if you accept Bitcoin? Do you have that agency? Of course you do. It's your perception of not having agency that you think you don't have agency. And if your perception is you don't have agency, it's someone else. Trust me, someone else will take your agency.
You often say that the natural state of the free market is deflationary. Can you explain in simple terms why you think so?
And an entrepreneur or a team working for an entrepreneur has to create value. It was what was against what was there before. So those other people creating value for us, and we only choose the things that give us more value. We never choose things that give us less value in a free market. We only choose things that give us more value. So if we choose things that give us more value, and entrepreneurs and the free market has to solve that problem for us, deliver us more value, or they fail. How could the free market be anything but deflation? And if you added something else to that, if you added, now you have technology, which is, if when I say technology, I mean broadly technology, which is invented by our minds to solve more problems. And it's moving this fast, with AI moving so fast to solve problems. Shouldn't those problems be solved at a faster and faster rate, um, and cost us less? Wouldn't we choose the businesses that gave us way more value and reduce labor? Or would we still choose the businesses that had tons of labor and cost more? Of course, we would choose the things that remove labor and gave us more value. So you can see how fast the prices want to fall, or prices want to fall, or value wants to go up, because you want more value. So in that system, if you are free, if the natural state of the free market is that competition, a competitive force to serve others, the output of that has to be deflation, or prices fall, or productivity gains, which means prices falling and value going up.
As a society, we should probably strive to reach this true free market state where everything is going to be deflationary. That's pretty much what you think is should be one of the main goal of our society.
So everybody has different goals, right? So when they choose something, when they buy something, they have different goals. Sometimes that they want to solve for time. Sometimes they want to solve for, I want the best value. I'll search around a lot. What society wants is a collection of who we are. So I'm not going to say what society wants. I'm saying what I want. What I want is to live in a fair world, where competition in an honest world accrues to us, that isn't stolen from us, accruing to central bankers, or accruing to a political class that tells us what the rules are. That's what I want.
Earlier in the conversation, you were saying that basically we shouldn't blame anyone else for robbing us or for putting us into this system of persistent of persistent inflation. But now you are pointing at the ruling class, at the politicians, at the central bankers as the people that benefit the most out of this unfair system we are in.
Yep, two different statements. The people closest to the money supply benefit the most. If you can lend money into existence that has no cost on it, and you are the lender into existence, you're the king of the world, lending money into existence, unlimited monetary units into existence, then you will win the most. But what I said is, that's not the problem. The problem is us using that money.
Fair enough. Yeah. No, thanks for clarifying that point. So there are a few sectors where the advancement of technology doesn't guarantee bringing down costs. For example, housing or healthcare. These are two sectors where the advancement of technology has not produced the sort of deflationary effect that you are talking about. Maybe can you address that point?
Sure. Every 2 or 3 months, there's a chart that goes around, it's spread around, and it goes viral, about sectors that prices fall, technology sectors that prices fall, and sectors that rise. Essentially regulatory sectors, and say housing, that acts as a store of value against a collapse of money. So in other words, housing is supporting broken money. So they, because when somebody has a huge mortgage on a house and they've taken that broken money, they won't let that house fall. But let's go into the things in housing. So every single supply chain, every single factory producing goods in housing is more efficient than it was 100 years ago. 100 years ago, just over 100 years ago, you could buy a Sears house delivered to your house from the Sears catalog, delivered to your lot where you had to build it yourself, but it was all of the materials were there for $2,500. So instead of looking at that chart through broken money, change that chart to M2, the change in money supply, and look at every single industry is falling. Every single industry, including housing. So if you measure housing from infinite monetary units, it will go up. Healthcare is a regulated industry, and what ends up happening is the lobbyists jump into healthcare for protection of you. Same as food, same as a whole bunch of different industries, and you have a giant um, industry that doesn't allow chat technology in as fast because it tells everybody it wants to protect them while it's farming them, and it keeps you sick. And so that system is going to break down because of technology. It is breaking down because of technology, because some people are moving outside that system. But it's essentially the regulated industries. The more regulation in an industry will keep prices high because it's not a free market.
Okay, and now let's talk about your view on Bitcoin, because you define Bitcoin as an asset that is outside the system, although many Bitcoiners price it as an asset within the system. Can you explain what you mean by that, and how else should people price Bitcoin?
Yeah, and Giovanni, I want to clarify something because I don't think of it as an asset outside of the system. If it was just an asset outside of the system, 5,000 years of human history says it would get centralized and fail. And why would it get centralized and fail? Because most people would price it as an asset, because money has always needed an asset underneath it to price money. And why would that be? Is because money's always been broken. So we could never store our money in money. So people stored it in assets like gold, and then the gold gets centralized and then gets changed. The rules change. And so if Bitcoin was an asset outside of the system, and you can see some of this right now, then you'd have governments regulating to it. Most people would trust the government with it. They would move into ETFs and a whole bunch of other things and give away their Bitcoin. They'd give away their Bitcoin because the government would say, I'm going to give you yield on it. Or the bank would say, I'm going to give you yield on it. So they move out of self-custody into centralization. And if it looked like that, it won't look like that. But if it looked like that, eventually Bitcoin would fail, just like gold failed, as something to hold governments, hold people in control, and hold a free market. The rules change. And so I don't price Bitcoin. I don't think about Bitcoin as an asset outside of the existing system. I see it as a protocol imposing new rules. And a protocol has a couple of characteristics. A neutral protocol has a couple of characteristics. First, a protocol is winner take all. There is no second internet. There's one internet. And the same games that were played against the internet from 1969 to 1989, companies, corporations trying to control the internet gave a whole bunch of what you would see today is other coins trying to beat Bitcoin. Same pattern is playing out. But what's happening on Bitcoin, what happens on a neutral protocol is it's better to build onto it than against it. And so as more and more people build onto it and extend functionality, what you can see in Lightning, Liquid, Arc, Spark, a whole bunch of layer twos building onto Bitcoin, natively onto Bitcoin, then you see other things building on too as well, like privacy and communications.
In this interview that I was listening, you were basically saying that many Bitcoiners price Bitcoin as if it was an asset system. So my question would be, how else should be Bitcoin priced?
Yeah, I think that's a good question because it's so hard, right? It's so hard for our brain to make that math work all the time because we're using different units to measure the world. In one system, you're using 21 million units to measure everything productivity gains flowing to you, and you're having to constantly make that calculation. And in another system, it's infinite monetary units, but you're used to pricing the world from the infinite monetary units, so you're not used to what I'm saying. In other words, a way to look at this is if you go to a new country and say one that you don't know much about, where the exchange rate changes quite a bit between your dollar and their dollar, you have a hard time converting prices into their currency. You're used to using your US dollar, and every time you go make a payment, it's a cost on your brain to be able to figure out what that looks like. And you go back to your calculator and you go, "Oh, what is this? What is this?" And sometimes you make mistakes. You get like if you're using a currency that has a million units to describe the same thing. Sometimes you make mistakes and you have wads of bills that are tons of wads of bills to make the same purchase. That's why this is hard. Why this is hard is you're using a different monetary unit to measure prices, and and it takes time to understand both that the natural state of the free market is deflation. It is true for sure. It always has been true, but that means your brain has no mental lattice to grab onto what I just said because you've always lived in something else. And so what your brain wants to do because of that cognitive dissonance is first, it can't be true. There's no way we require inflation, right? Those people, those experts that have always told me what you want to um, resolve that by not going to the truth. You want to resolve it from your system. And the same thing is true for Bitcoin. Is it's pricing the world, not the other way around. It's hard to get to that step because it means doing a whole bunch of other calculations in your head that aren't normal.
You often define Bitcoin as a protocol that is decentralized, secure, and that is linked to energy. So I understand the decentralized, open, and secure part, but why is it important that it's connected to energy?
So energy is life. We require energy in our bodies. We require energy, mitochondria. We require energy for life. Energy equals life. More energy equals. Look at every country with higher energy outputs. There is no low energy um, country that is a wealthy country. Energy is required for life. It's the first principle, and bounding that to energy in essentially proof of work, driving energy abundance by creating a free market in energy where anybody with any energy can make money by mining Bitcoin, chases abundant energy everywhere. It scatters out around the world trying to chase lower cost energy. And that secures Bitcoin's protocol to energy, distributed decentralized energy. And then the nodes, you, me, everybody that run nodes to make sure the rules were followed means those people bounding to energy can't cheat. And so now you have something that's bound to energy that um, that is decentralized and secure. You have a new internet. Way to look at it is you have a new internet being built that is now grounded to energy that can't be co-opted, versus an internet that is co-opted. That all of the things that you use on the internet could be shut off tomorrow through a corporation. You could have your bank account stopped. You could be surveilled. You could be all of the things inside the existing system that we're using are centralized and centralized more and more because money is broken and they would be centralized. So you have an internet that is not bound by energy, You have a set of rules that is not bound by energy, and you have a new set of rules that's bound by energy, decentralized and secure, that's going to break the other system.
Okay, and now I would like to discuss something that you posted on X not long ago. You were basically saying that the system we live in is essentially a tug of war between two opposing forces. Like one force is the deflationary force of technology, making things more accessible, more efficient. On the other hand, you have the inflationary force of governments that have built this debt-based system in which they have to decrease the value of money in order to be able to serve the debt that is continue in growing indefinitely. So yeah, you have like these two opposing forces, deflationary forces on one side and inflationary forces on the other side. How does this conflict resolve itself?
Through chaos, through massive chaos, through massive chaos, and probably time and time again. So I wrote in my book something called the sandpile game. And in the sandpile game, in the 80s, some scientists put together this game where an arm would drop a piece of sand at a time on a table over and over and over and over again. And what you would see is inside there would be a cave in of the sand pile, and then another cave in the sand pile. But what it built more and more, it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you imaged underneath the sand pile in through the sand, you could see fractures everywhere. And then at some point, one grain of sand would take the entire sand pile down. But you could never guess what grain of sand. And so what people are asking, with it's Iran or the blockades that are going to come and the oil prices going up and the food's insecurity that's coming, what they're asking is, when does that sand take the whole system down? And it won't look like that, or it likely won't look like that. It'll look like more and more chaos depending where you are, and depending how much chaos you're giving to the system. To you, it'll be more and more chaos. That's why I say the only choice is to exit. The only choice is to claim your agency and move to a new system. Well, this is not the only choice. You can stay in the system and contribute to that system that's getting more and more growing more and more unstable.
Now you're offering essentially a solution to the individual that can decide to potentially opt out from this system by essentially saving, using Bitcoin, saving Bitcoin in Bitcoin.
Building on Bitcoin, asking other people to take it in trade. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Start a podcast, teach more people.
That's sort of a grassroots process, though. What would you personally do if you were in charge of those policies in order to prevent this system from collapsing? What would be a potential solution from the point of view of someone who is in charge?
I would realize government would have to get way smaller. It would have to compete in the free market. That I am elected to serve others, period, if I was elected. Now, I would never want that job. My job is in service in that role. And that would mean that technology would drive that role too. And government would have to get way smaller by stealing way less. It would have to get efficient. You'd have to remove regulatory burden. You would drive efficiency like crazy. Now that also, if you were inside that system, if you allowed money just to collapse to zero, and you were the US dollar, you couldn't do that because your citizens would go to zero, right? Everything would go to zero. The entire world would have no money. It would go back to almost the Stone Ages for a time until it rebuilt on the other side. So I would know that there would have to be a transition. And so what I would do if I was in that role is I would tell people they need to be in self-custody. I would tell people they need to have privacy and money. I would ensure that all of the innovation on top of Bitcoin was done in my country. So the best entrepreneurs in the world, I would protect it. I would protect it like crazy. So the best entrepreneurs in the world wanted to move to my country to be able to provide more value to other people through a new protocol that was going to provide value to other people. I would not try to control it. I would not try to build tether to it. I would not try to give. I would not try to create a broken money on top of it.
So you claim that basically the fiat cycle, the fiat system cannot really last forever because it's unsustainable, and therefore at a certain point it should be replaced by a more sustainable system, which I could define as the Bitcoin standard, if I understand correctly. So I heard that so this is a theory which I heard since the time I entered the crypto space, the Bitcoin space. It was 8 years ago. Still, it remains a theory, and there is no sign that the fiat system is actually collapsing. So my question is, what if the fiat system is actually more resilient than you think, and it can continue, adapt, and resist indefinitely?
It won't resist indefinitely. If you look at every fiat currency fails. Every fiat currency fails. It's just a matter of time until they do. So you can look objectively to that point, and you can say, do currencies fail? Does every fiat currency fail? Just look it up on Claude or ChatGPT, and you'll see every fiat currency fails, because it's designed around infinite monetary units, and people start to realize. So how long can it last? It can last a long time, because what you're talking about is it's a belief system. It's a belief system in you. And what you just said is a theory. I don't do this. And probably what that means, Giovanni, is you yourself are still measuring Bitcoin in a piece of paper, even though you may own Bitcoin. You might own a whole bunch of other coins that compete against it, right? Without knowing how it's different. So it is emergent. It has to be emergent, because the change isn't somebody else. The change is us. If we've all lived in a different system forever, a zero-sum game that keeps resetting through cycles, and then a different country owns a currency for a while and they control the world for a while, and then a different one and a different one. And if it keeps on happening like that, in these cycles that persist over time, and we keep falling back into the trap, then isn't it us? Bitcoin resolves that paradox, but it only resolves that paradox for people who want to resolve the paradox. And if the entire world describes Bitcoin as an asset or a technology, or forget Bitcoin, if the entire world keeps using broken money, it'll persist for a long, long time. But here's why it won't persist. Technology is marching on, driving what I'm saying, which is truth, into people's minds. And as one system gets worse for them, they make choices. So it's not a static system. It's an emergent system because of us. We change. We think we were going to do one thing, and then we do another thing when the alternative is better. So we know that one system is going to get way worse, and that'll drive a whole bunch of people to a new system that's getting better.
You mentioned that the thesis that you have is valid as long as Bitcoin remains open, decentralized, secure network. Now, there are concerns that the security of the network could be compromised, because at the end of the day, Bitcoin is a technology made by humans, and specifically the quantum threat is being discussed as one of the potential threats to the security of Bitcoin. Not long ago, Google published an update that says that potentially quantum computer powerful enough could emerge as soon as 2029. Aren't you concerned that the quantum threat could disrupt your Bitcoin thesis?
I'm not concerned about the quantum threat. In fact, and so it's today it's the new boogeyman that not enough people are deep enough, so they trust other experts to want to break Bitcoin. So I am not concerned. Specifically, I'd like people to look at a website called Bitcoin Lens. I think it's bitcoinlens.net. And which describes what Bitcoin is a different system, a time-based system that is immune from quantum threats. Now, that's not to say that there aren't other threats, or that that we shouldn't look at that what if that's wrong. I'm convinced that that most of the things that we think will kill Bitcoin are psyops from a system trying to kill Bitcoin. China's going to kill Bitcoin. Government's going to stop Bitcoin. Bitcoin's bad for the environment. We've been through over and over and over again all of these threats. This is just the newest one. And so, if the team at Bitcoin Lens, if they're wrong, and quantum is one day going to be a threat, then there's a whole bunch of people right now that are constantly digging into what is the real threat? What does that look like? And should we make a change? And I run a node. I'm watching this very carefully. Um, be, um, Outside of the marketing noise, that Google paper, which was co-authored by Ethereum, by people in the Ethereum Foundation, to so when you actually break down what's actually happening in quantum, I think it's probably a nothing burger. I don't think it's a risk, but the other side of me says, okay, let's assume it's a risk, a real risk, and then what would we do to upgrade the protocol over time? But I'm not sure it needs anything right now. Then there's certainly no rush.
If it was for you, you just wouldn't touch anything.
I would not right now. I would be aware. So I'm starting to become aware of some of the work. When it comes down to a time, I'll go way deeper on it. But this is no urgency for me right now.
And do you think there is a damage being done by people that are trying to spread the urgency about this?
Yes, just like there was damage being done by China's going to block crypto, just like there's damage being done to, or to capture Bitcoin, just like there's damage being done. We live in an emergent world that is coming to grips with a new system that is outside of a control system. That control system will do everything possible to try to control it. You live in a system, Giovanni, and this is really important. Really important, where most of the files for Epstein didn't actually come out, and nobody went to jail, and you still use that money, thinking thinking that it looks different. So if many politicians, many stars, and everything else were connected into that same thing that told you how the world works, and wouldn't it still have to look like that? Wouldn't there just be a different person, different people? Because it's funded by the money that comes from you. And so think about how much power that has over your beliefs, and now apply it to this unknown thing, that now you should be scared of this other thing, and what could happen. So that's why I start from a different spot. I start from a spot that says, I expect nonsense. I expect tons of nonsense. I expect noise everywhere as this accelerates, and I and so most of that noise, those articles that spread, because the articles that spread about the quantum threat on that Google paper were so over. When I talk about fear porn, of course they're going to spread because most people are watching fear porn.
Yeah, No, I get your point. I guess that the Bitcoin community at the end of the day will find a path. Jeff, thanks a lot for this conversation. I think there was a lot of food for thoughts.
Thanks, Giovanni.